I'm Jerilyn Dufresne, and this is the story behind my stories.
You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mock,
Ernest Klein, Tim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Jerilyn Dufresne.
It's episode 231. Before we get to our awesome interview with Jerilyn, I want to tell you about a few sponsors this week. If you would like to sponsor the show and have your product or service featured on the Author Stories podcast, go to hankgarner.com and there's a link in the top menu there where you can send us a message and we'll be glad to talk about it. Today's show is sponsored by Peter Caudron and his book Retrograde. The international team at the Mars Endeavour colony is prepared for every eventuality except one. What happens when disaster strikes Earth? This book is fantastic. If you are a fan of The Martian, this has kind of that sort of feel to it. I love this book. I love when I got to talk with Peter on the show a couple of weeks ago. Go pick up the book Retrograde. You're going to absolutely love it. The Paragons trilogy by C. Stephen Manley. When dark portals open, heroes will awaken. This is so much fun. Part science fiction horror thriller, part superhero novel. Awakened. Paragon's Book 1 is the first novel in a trilogy series. It provides a gripping origin story filled with mystery, fast-paced action, horrific monsters, and fringe science. If you enjoy a thriller novel with a heavy dose of the fantastic, you'll love Awakened. The entire trilogy is available now. Go pick it up from C. Stephen Manley. Also, thanks to Richard Fox, winner of the 2017 Dragon Award. His 9-book series, The Ember War Saga, is available now. All 9 books. If you're like me, you don't want to jump into a series until, there's a little bit to it, because nothing is worse than getting involved in something and then waiting for them to come out. Go pick up The Ember War Saga. You're going to love it. Military sci-fi at its very best. Also, thanks to Daniel Arthur Smith for sponsoring with Tales from the Canyons of the Damned. The brand new Halloween episode is out, and you're going to love the cover. I'll just tell you this. Good grief, it's Halloween. Go check out that cover. Tales from the Canyons of the Damned, my absolute favorite monthly publication. Go pick it up. Also, thanks to Bob Williams and his newly re-released Music City Macabre and Arch City Apocalypse. Go pick up these 2 books. He also bundled them together as one volume if you'd like to get it that way. There's a link to it in the show notes. I'd also like to thank Samuel Peralta and the Future Chronicles for sponsoring the show. We're going to be talking a lot about them in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. Thank you to Samuel Peralta and the Future Chronicles. Also, my good friends at Keystroke Medium, one of the very best YouTube podcast video shows about writing and the craft. I love these guys. I love their show. I've been on it before. And we're going to be doing something pretty cool, a little joint thing between Author Stories and Keystroke Medium coming soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for sponsoring the show. Thanks to all our sponsors for sponsoring this week. And as always, at the end of the show, there's an audio clip from Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. Thank you for listening. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, my guest is Jerilyn Dufresne, and she is the author of a series of books that are amazing and funny and full of surprises. Welcome to the show, Jerilyn.
Thanks, Hank. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you. I begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller?
Like other authors, I've listened to some of your podcasts, and I expected this question. But I'm having a really hard time quantifying being able to voice my feelings on this, because I always wrote. I don't have a conscious thought of wanting to be a writer because I was a writer. When other kids were doodling or writing each other notes in grade school, I was writing epic poetry. luckily has not survived. And I was writing short stories and things like that. So I've always lived in my head creatively in that respect. So I didn't want to be a writer. I was a writer.
I love that. It really is just kind of part of our DNA for the most part, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's awesome. What sorts of things did you read when you were younger? Were you a big reader?
Absolutely. I read everything I could get my hands on at our local library. I live in Quincy, Illinois. I moved back home here after being gone for many, many years. But in Quincy, Illinois, the public library had a rule where you couldn't go to the adult section until you were in 8th grade or beyond. Well, they let me in 5th or 6th grade because I read everything in the children and youth section. And we got permission from my parents for me to read the adult. I even would enjoy reading encyclopedias. I would start and just go through the whole thing just because I found it extremely fascinating just to learn more about different subjects.
That's so funny. I could just picture you as that precocious kid, where the librarians were like, seriously, just go over there and get out of our hair.
That's exactly how it happened. My sister and I, she's 11 months young. I'm the oldest of 9, and my sister that's 11 months younger and I would take the bus downtown. Back in those olden days, you could take a bus alone and go downtown in a small city, and
those days are sadly gone.
Yes, unfortunately. But we would go to the library religiously every week or two and stack up the books. We could only take 7 home with us, and that's what I would do. But I remember when a university professor, a friend of my dad's, who was a teacher, visited from California once, I sat at his feet and just kept asking him questions. I was like 7 or 8. And just asking him questions about evolution because we were very staunch Catholics. But I found the idea of evolution so fascinating and so wonderful. And I brought out an encyclopedia that had a picture of apes turning into people. I mean, this is very old encyclopedia of apes turning into people. And I found it so wonderful. And I would question him about it time and time again to tell me more about evolution. And he probably taught English Lit or something.
But in your mind, he was the guy that had all the knowledge.
That's right. That's right.
That's great. You said that your parents had to write a note that it was okay for you to go to the adult section of the library. One thing that I do notice in a lot of writers is that there seems to be a person or a few people that really, sense this thing in writers and or in creative people, and they nurture that, or at least they don't stand in the way of it. What was your family an artistic family, and did they kind of foster creativity in you and your siblings?
Well, not especially. We're a very blue collar family, and in fact, my father became ill when I was just beginning high school. And well, even younger than that actually, but became totally disabled, and so we really had no money or anything like that. But they both of my parents said, you can do whatever you want, you can be whoever you want. So my father had been a printer, and my mother had worked in a telephone company before having a house full of children, and so but they were both encouragers. For all of us kids, we could be what we wanted. And almost all of us are in a professional field. And it's a testament to them telling us we could do whatever that we set our minds to.
And sometimes that's all that a kid needs, is just to have someone not hold them back. And, really the sky's the limit.
Absolutely.
So during those days, what sorts of genres really intrigued you, or were you just kind of all over the place? Was there any certain kind of story that really piqued your imagination?
Yeah, I even though I write cozy mysteries myself, I loved science fiction, and I do to this day. And Robert Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land was one of my favorites that really made me think, yeah, there are people somewhere else, or there's life somewhere else, and we're all in this together. We're kind of one crew, even though they're from somewhere else. And then I liked Arthur Clarke, but what I really loved were the stories where the women were the protagonists, like Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I was Jo. When I read it, there was, Katharine Hepburn's face was not Jo from the movie. It was me.
Right.
I was the heroine. And the same thing with Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen's, my favorite of her books. I was Lizzie. So I would really enjoy those books that had the female protagonists who were strong, but still not wanting to be strong alone. They wanted to be strong with other people.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction in those stories. That there's you can be strong, but in community at the same time.
Right. That's the way I viewed it.
Sure. I think some listeners, probably not after listening to the show for a while, but you think if a person writes cozy mystery, then they have just trained themselves and immersed themselves in cozy mystery. And I think it might be a little odd to people sometimes to hear that their favorite authors really read widely and read in genres that they don't necessarily write in. But I think that makes for interesting stories when you know when you have a larger toolkit to pull from. When you're writing, because you have read widely, and even though this thing doesn't necessarily inform your genre, it sure makes the writer stand apart. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree with you 100%. If I only thought in the cozy mystery genre, I think I would soon run out of ideas. But I do read still a lot of different genres, and Hugh Howey's one of my favorite writers in the whole world. And once I discovered him, I thought, now I want to be a science fiction writer. I want to do dystopian fiction. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. However, that's hard. Writing cozy mysteries to me isn't really hard. I get an idea. I have I get an idea, a germ of an idea, and I just run with it. And so I don't have to write down this whole world, develop this whole world and make sure everything is the same in that world. And, it's a lot of work. And for me, writing cozies is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're fun to read. There's a reason they're called cozy. They just there's something about them that resonates with readers and makes them feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think mine I describe as beach reads a lot because they're very short, and they're easily read over a good weekend, when you can just sit and enjoy yourself. So yeah, I like the word cozy.
Yeah. I want to come back to that in just a little bit, but before we start talking specifically about these books that you've written, what did you decide to do when you got out of school and set out on your own? You said that you always lived inside these stories and all of this, but did it dawn on you to pursue that as a career?
Well, not writing, no, but the things that came to me through reading, yeah. I have always romanticized occupations, and that's part of being this reader and this creative person, this writer. I've romanticized jobs. So I was a pre-med major in college, not because I especially thought I could be the best doctor, but because I wanted to be Audrey Hepburn in a nun story working in the Congo. Seriously. I mean, it just sounds so ludicrous to me now, but that's how I had romanticized being a doctor. Even now, since I'm a licensed psychotherapist, I think, I wonder if Doctors Without Borders would still take me. I have this romanticized notion of occupations. Well, after I kind of set a fire in the organic chemistry lab in college, I changed my major to psychology, so there was no danger of that. And
I love it.
And even then, though, my interest was in crisis intervention and disaster work. a romanticized notion again, not looking at the hard work involved when you do that work. And I've done a lot of that work over my life, but not seeing at that point, gee, this is going to be hard, but instead seeing, look at me helping people after a hurricane. It was me being the heroine of my own story again. So I had that problem my whole life. And fortunately, like the rest of us, I do have feet of clay. And so I absolutely know I'm not this heroine. I absolutely know that. But I can be a villain at times. But I still have that romanticized notion of occupations. I went to the convent for 2 years. Really wanted to be a nun, but I don't think I wanted to be it for the right reason. I was just in high school, so I was very young and impressionable. But at that point, I still had this romanticized notion. Heaven Knows Mr. Allison with Deborah Kerr and I forgot who the male star was, that he was a dreamboat.
Right.
There was a nun on an island with him. So again, I lived in my head with these characters, even while trying to plan out my own life. But I ended up becoming a licensed clinical social worker. I have a master's in social work. And but even with that, I've had several different types of careers within the career of mental health.
I imagine you as a young woman as an Anne Shirley type of character.
Now, who's Anne Shirley? Is who?
From Anne of Green Gables.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know her last name. I apologize. Absolutely. I love this new iteration of it on Netflix.
I haven't watched it yet, but I need to.
I don't think it's Netflix. It's Hulu, one of them. But I watched it anyway, and I absolutely love the little star of it. And I can see myself in her because she lives in her head as well, as far as dreaming and seeing things and knowing that she can take on the world.
Right. So you became you went to work in the mental health field, and my mother worked in mental health her entire career, and I understand some of the challenges that come with that from watching her and conversations with her. What did you learn as that later informed your writing, maybe from working in that field and interacting with people on such a deep level like you do?
Well, I learned what most writers, I shouldn't say that, I don't know, what many writers know, and what is written about how we're supposed to write is that people aren't all good or all bad. We like to characterize us as wearing a black hat or a white hat, but you might err on one side or the other, and there's certainly some people that are more evil than good, and some people that are, basically more good. But there's always this redeeming factor somewhere deep inside someone. Sometimes you have to go really, really deep to find it. But I learned that in working in mental health all those years, is that when I'm still doing mental health work, actually, looking at individuals, when I'm writing my stories, the villain has to have something good about him, some reason that someone in the world might love them.
Yeah. And some of the most compelling villains, if we want to use that word, are the ones that really believe they're doing the right thing. And when you start really peeling back, character motivation, you can get some really interesting stories there. Absolutely.
And so I just had my first book published in 2013, and I'm writing number 8 now. So I've got some experience now, limited, I guess, with 7 books out. But what I learned from writing book 1 was evident in book 2. And what I learned there was in book 3. And so, like most writers who are newer at the game of publishing, I have learned in each book, and I hope that each book has gotten better.
Yeah, absolutely. You have traveled widely around the world. What has carried you around the world, and what is the one state you have not visited?
Oh, yeah, you read that because I've been in 49 states. Well, the one state is Alaska, unfortunately. I worked for the Crisis Prevention Institute for 10 years. And for 5 of those years, I traveled nearly every week giving workshops internationally. So I did, and nationally. So I went to all the provinces in Canada except Anne Shirley's province, Prince Edward Island. It's the only one I've not been to. But I was scheduled to go to Alaska to give a workshop, and I was so excited. I mean, who wouldn't be?
Right.
And all of a sudden, someone got ill who was supposed to teach another course that only I could teach. I was the only other person trained in that course. And so I got transferred to some other state, and another person got my Alaska gig. And so I haven't been there yet. But it's on my bucket list because I am a traveler. And in fact, just this week I got back from, or last week, I guess it was Friday, I got back from Ireland and Scotland. And traveling just feeds my soul, and it really inspires my writing, I think.
Sure. I can totally see that. What is the thing that surprised you, for someone who's not, if they're, from the U.S., and have never really been outside, our borders, and you start getting away from the USA and start seeing other parts of the world? What are some of the things that surprise you when you meet people from other countries and experience other cultures and get a little distance from you and the homeland?
Well, my worldview has been, most of my adult life, my worldview has been that we're all in this together. And so I do view them as any other country as my sister or my brother. And so when I meet people, what I've noticed is that as long as I'm trying, even though we can't speak the same language, as long as I'm trying, they are welcoming. If I don't walk in with, you have to speak English because that's the only language there is, in such an ugly way of dealing with the world. Like I was in Japan by myself transferring planes, and most people might know some English, but I was in an area where they didn't, and I just did charades and brought my acting into it, and people were so kind and so loving toward me and so helpful and respectful. And what I've been told, I'm a counselor now for people from other cultures, and what I've been told is that once you say, I don't know, or I want to learn about you, that's all it takes.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. That just the act of kind of humbling yourself and making that human connection. There really is the only thing that separates us is the ability to communicate verbally, and as humans, we find a way to connect with each other. It's really beautiful.
That's right. I really love learning about other cultures.
Absolutely. And it seeps into your writing, I have noticed. I can tell that, not only that you are a very empathetic soul, but that you're really interested in the way the world works. It really bleeds over in your writing. But speaking of that, who is Sam Darling, and how did this come into your life?
Well, in 1995, I was alone in a hotel room. I don't remember what state it was, but it was near water because I always say the fleet wasn't in, so I had nothing to do. And so I was alone in a hotel room, and I just started writing. And before I knew it, maybe a month or two later, I had this short novel completed. And so I was on a writer's bulletin board in 1995 on the old Prodigy. Yeah. And we're still together, by the way, this group. It's an amazing group. I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But I just started writing it, and some people said, well, let me read it because I like how you write on the computer, so let me read it. Well, it was really awful. It was no action happened until chapter 3. There was just character development and stuff. And so what I learned was that if you're going to have a murder, it needs to happen pretty soon, or something close to that murder. Something has to happen to grab people's interest. So I rewrote it, and that ultimately, I got it published in 2013, and it's the first book in my series, Who Killed My Boss. But Sam Darling is an irreverent and loving and nosy individual. And she will tell you that she's not nosy, she's just curious. But I think she's wrong because I'm curious and I know the difference. Like, here's the difference. I wonder what's in your medicine cabinet, but I would never open it. Sam Darling wonders and looks. That's the difference between curious and nosy to me.
I love that. I love that. And we all know a Sam Darling, I think.
Yeah, and she's really nosy. She asks questions all the time. And she's curious, too, because, I mean, I do ask questions a lot because I'm curious about things. But she butts into her ex-boyfriend's cop business. She wants to be the one to solve the problem. She knows that she knows. And she has a relationship with her dog that is psychic to her. Now, I really don't know if it's psychic or not, if they communicate, but Sam says they do, and that's good enough for me. She's a character complete. I mean, she's not, it's not somebody I write. She reveals herself to me as I write. And it's so weird, but that's how it works. And so Sam tells me she's got a psychic relationship with Clancy, her dog, and she does.
Well, we all know someone that's nosy like that, and they get on everyone's nerves. But as soon as you find a dead body in your living room, it's that nosy friend that you call on.
That's right. And at the same time, I don't think she's real likable in book one. I've gotten some feedback. But she becomes a little mellower, but not too much throughout the rest of the books. And everybody likes her now as a person, which is nice. But she was nosy at the very beginning of that book. In Who Killed My Boss, her boss dies 15 minutes after hiring her. And so she feels it's her innate right to find out who did it because he died 15 minutes after hiring her, and he was murdered. And so she really does think it's her business, and no one can tell her any different.
I love that Sam is a fully formed character, and that she communicates with you. I understand what you're saying there because I have those kind of characters as well. And it's also interesting to me that she comes off at first as not very likable. But I have numerous relationships in my life with people, and my first encounter with them was not necessarily the most positive. But as I've grown to know them and to love them, those things that first annoyed me are some of the most endearing qualities about that character. And that's one thing that really intrigues me about a series with a long-running character, is that we really do come to know that character, and their quirks and their eccentricities are the things that we come to love about them.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I have some really close friends that way, and we even talk about that, about how our quirks are what makes us more charming, more fun, whatever, more interesting. There's a lot of ways to describe it. But Sam becomes mellower as throughout her books as she does fall in love. And I think that's a real interesting part of her, too, and how she has to make some changes in her personality because now she's with someone else. Right. It's not just her and her dog. And I really like that about her. People will say, well, you're starting to write this like I'm writing number 8, and they'll say, well, who died? And I'll say, I don't know yet. And they'll say, well, who killed him? And I don't know I don't know. And I honestly don't know until it happens. That's the ultimate pantser, isn't it?
Right. You said that you were hanging out on this writer's board on Prodigy in 1995. Were you hanging out on that board before you started writing this first book? Okay.
No, I was not. I had a friend who was a producer from New York he was only a friend online in another board, and he suggested I check out this other board when I said, I've written this rough draft and I really need to be around people who know what they're talking about. And he said, well, there's a group called Housewife Writers. And I said, well, I'm not a house or a wife. I don't know. I don't know if I belong there. And he says, no, you'll belong there. So I don't listen much in a group. I don't watch it. I just kind of jump in and introduce myself. And they welcomed me. And I soon learned that there were only a few actual homemakers in the group, that many were well-published writers, and others were beginning like I was, but they were many different professions. And somebody said they called it Housewife Writers because they did not want just anybody just stopping by all the time. And if you call it Housewife Writers, people will turn up their nose and say, oh, well, that's not interesting to me, and they'll move on. And it's actually a group of men and women who have become cherished friends, and as I said, we're still together. And of course, there's no Prodigy, but we have our own private bulletin board where we communicate. And one of them, in fact, went to Ireland and Scotland with me.
That's fantastic. I know exactly what you mean about kind of hiding yourself behind the housewife writer thing. I had a job a few years ago, and I would always have a set of screwdrivers in my desk drawer, and people would borrow my screwdrivers and never bring them back. So one day I replaced them with a bright pink, like fluorescent pink toolkit, and no one ever stole my screwdrivers after that. So that
that's a sad thing, though.
It is, but it's
yeah, but it's
it is, yeah. So I know what you mean. Certain people won't drop by if you call it that, and.
And these are just my just really close friends, and I love them all, and I'm really lucky to have learned so much from them.
That's beautiful. What do you think that being in a community like that with the kind of camaraderie and the sorts of relationships that you build of trust and transparency, sometimes I think some of those relationships and kind of work to make you a better writer, maybe more so than just writing and turning your work over to an editor who's not connected with you. Like there's something that happens in the growth of the writer that in a situation like that is more than just someone editing your work. Does that make sense at all?
It absolutely does. There has to be trust, though. There has to be trust that somebody's going to be able to say, that doesn't really work for me, rather than just patting you on the back all the time. For example, it was from someone in this group that I learned that the action has to take place, pretty fast. And so in my second book, it starts, he fell at my feet. Nice place for a man. And then I learned, well, I don't have to make it happen in the first sentence like that. But anyway, in the second book, it happens in the first sentence. But I learned that from someone in the group, to really grab somebody with that very first sentence.
I love that. And it also helps that these people learn your voice and what things will work for you that might not work for another writer because they understand how you work.
Absolutely. And one of the members ultimately became my publisher. She's an indie publisher, Patrice Fitzgerald, and
I love Patrice.
Oh, good. Yes, she's an awesome writer. I love her science fiction. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's been on the show.
Oh, cool. Well, anyway, I told her around the world trip right now, I'm partially funding that since she's my publisher and get some of my money. But I appreciate her so much because I'm a good editor myself, and when she gets my books, she doesn't have to do much. But she's able to re-edit it, but it's mostly just line editing that she likes the book itself. And so she's been real helpful, and we have such a trusting relationship because we've known each other for 22 years, online and in person.
Nice.
So she's been real encouraging with my work, and so I'm working on number 8, but I have ideas for 9, 10, and 11, maybe 12 even. I've noted them down somewhere, and so we're going to continue this whole series while I want to start another series as well.
Love it. I love it. You have another recurring character in your books, and you mentioned him earlier, and that's Sam's dog, Clancy. What do you feel like Clancy brings to the story? And by that, for you as a writer, do you feel like having the character of Clancy opens doors that would not be open any other way? And does he allow you to do things that you couldn't do without that character?
Absolutely. And it's a she.
I'm sorry, I knew that.
She would be affronted knowing she was called a male. Clancy's a very important character because, first of all, Sam has a really close relationship with Clancy. They communicate to each other. And although we never hear Clancy talk, Sam understands what Clancy's saying, and it informs her actions at times. But Clancy does much more than just be a pet to Sam. She's her sidekick. She goes with her a lot of places. Ultimately, she becomes a certified therapy dog, which is not a service dog. She's not a service dog for Sam. She's a therapy dog, which means she can go to hospitals and nursing homes. And Sam was able to take her to her office. And that is all based upon the fact that I have a dog named Gus, who is a certified therapy dog. And Gus and I aren't psychically connected. However,
darn it.
He's very empathic. He really reads people's moods, which is what makes him a good therapy dog. When I teach at Quincy University, and when one day in the classroom, a student was crying because we were talking about some traumatic things, and Gus ran across the room and jumped up on her desk and just started cuddling her.
Man.
And that was when I said, okay, that dog's a therapy dog. And so that was like a magic moment for me. And if that former student, who is now a friend, listens to this, she'll have some good memories from this moment. So anyway, Clancy's being a therapy dog is based upon the fact that Gus is. And although you can't take therapy dogs into restaurants, for example, like you can service dogs, you can take them into other places. And Gus and I volunteer at several places. And so Clancy is allowed access into hospitals and nursing homes as a volunteer. But Sam seems to think Clancy can go wherever she wants. Clancy does help solve the murders. And the one I'm writing right now I'm real excited about because apparently Clancy knows who did it, but no one else does. Apparently Clancy's got some sort of clue, and I'm sure Sam will figure it out soon, but Clancy also humanizes Sam, I think. When Sam gets to, I know what I'm doing, I'm the boss here, and nobody knows how to solve this like I do, and I don't care if you're a police officer. When she gets in that kind of a mode, I think Clancy kind of softens her and grounds her. And so that's another really neat thing about having a dog. And I've had many readers say, I don't care who you kill off, but if the dog dies, I'm not reading you anymore.
Yeah, I'm out. That's it. Yeah.
So Clancy's going to live to be 100.
That's the deal breaker. You stack bodies up like cordwood, but leave the dog alone.
That's right.
Jerilyn, what makes a story a cozy mystery? What is it that sets that genre apart?
That's a good question. I didn't know when I wrote my first book. I just wrote it, just seat of the pants again, like I do. And then I learned it was a cozy, and cozy means there's not a lot of blood and guts and gore in view. So the murders happen off stage, basically, if you were watching it. It's like Murder, She Wrote kind of a story. Jessica comes in after it happens, basically, and you don't see the entrails when someone's stabbed. You don't even get it described too much.
Right.
And that's versus a hard-boiled where you do get it described and you do see the entrails.
Right. Have you ever tried writing outside the genre?
I did. Well, it's a mystery. Well, I had two yeses. One is in Hugh Howey's World of Wool. He allows people to write and make money off of it even. So I wrote what I wonderful short story, but didn't think it was long enough and wanted more added. And when I added, it didn't seem right. It just wasn't good. And so that's kind of just on the side. But I've written another, a standalone mystery that is not published yet because I'm thinking about it. But it's called Reality Is, and it's about murder on a reality show, and I really like it a lot. And what's different about it is that it's more gory. There's a lot of cussing in it, and there's a bit horror to it. Not quite, but semi. And in my cozies, there's not really cussing. And Sam said shit one day. Can
Yes.
I say that word on your podcast? Sam said shit in one book, and I had readers say, that's not why I read your books. And I thought, okay, I need to think more about Murder, She Wrote. Although I didn't really watch that show, I just heard about it. But it's got to be able to be G-rated. So my books are. I did write a sex scene once, and I laughed so hard that I almost wet my pants. And so it was one of those moments. So I thought, yeah, writing steamy romance is not for me.
That's like when I try to write a love scene and I give it to my wife to read, and she does all the laughing. So I get it. Oh, as a writer, when you write outside your genre, sometimes, and you kind of stretch your limbs a little bit outside those confines that you've given yourself, do you find that helps your creativity? And then when you come back to the thing that people want to read, that you feel a little more refreshed, even though you might not bring those things back with you?
Absolutely. And even not just writing outside my genre, but writing outside of this series. Like I wrote a short story for Mostly Murder. It's a murder anthology. And it's Mostly Murder, till death. And it was supposed to be about different couples, right? Till death. And mine is called None of Your Business, with none being N-U-N. And there is a couple in it, but it's a nun whose father is in the mafia. And I found it so interesting, these completely different characters in a different city. And then when I came back to my series, I did find it easier writing. It did stretch me, did make me think a little differently, because my series, Sam Darling series, it's set in Quincy, Illinois. And so it was really nice to write in a fictional city where everything didn't have to be exact, like on the corner of 8th and Main Street, whatever. You know?
Writing in a setting that is real, are you ever conscious of thinking, I can't do that. That's a real place. I don't want to leave a dead body there. Or, do those things ever concern you?
Well, they don't concern me because what I've done is I've changed the names to protect me. So, like there's a wonderful little restaurant in Quincy called the Abbey. And because it's really close to a Franciscan monastery, right? So it's called the Abbey. And it's called the Rectory in the book.
Gotcha.
Everybody knows the Rectory is the Abbey. Anybody in Quincy. I have readers from all over the world, though, but it doesn't matter to them. And the people in Quincy are having fun. They've said, different people have told me they're having fun deciding exactly, like, is St. Francis University really Quincy University, or is it somewhere else? And trying to figure out that kind of stuff. So I have changed the names of different places.
But it's a little hat tip to people in the know, that just a wink and a nod.
Yeah, and it's been kind of fun trying to figure these things out. and then watching other people try to figure things out.
I love it. How many more books do you think Sam and Clancy are going to give you?
Well, I think I'm writing number 8, so I think I can go to at least 12, but I may be able to go, go to more. I have 12. Well, no, see, I have 12 figured out. I just looked at my little list about what an idea for each one. It's a sentence about each possibility. So I have 12, but I think there can be more. I don't really see a limit. It's really as far as I want to keep writing, or as I'm able to keep writing. Because even though my first book was published in 2013, I was 65 at the time, and so I'm 70 now. So it just depends on how long this old mind keeps working. And what's really fun for me is that my writing funds my travel. And I want to be able to keep traveling. And so I will keep writing in order to keep traveling. So if I run out of ideas for Sam and company, I will, my next series that I want to work on anyway is about the nun whose dad's in the mafia. He's a mortician, or he runs funeral homes. And so she works in a morgue as a nun. And I just think there's a lot of possibilities there.
I love it. Jerilyn, we have a lot of writers that listen to the show. And hearing someone that is as accomplished as you are in so many different things, I think will be very motivational for listeners to hear, especially those that are trying to write while carrying on careers and all of that stuff. You have several careers, and you're a world traveler, and you keep cranking out these fantastic books. Do you have any piece of advice that you would share with the other writers out there on how to juggle your creative side and making sure that you get the creative work out while also maintaining all the other stuff that you do?
Oh, well, I got to confess first that I'm a TV junkie as well. So I love reality television, especially where people are competing, and I get ideas from that as well. And my dog and I go to Panera most mornings and sit on the patio, and I listen to other people talk. I eavesdrop, and I get ideas for books that way. So, and I play cards every Friday with the Game of Thrones. Such old ladies gambling. So, I mean, I have a life outside of my work, but I quit working full time a few years back, and now I have 3 part-time jobs and 1 more on the way. So I'm working a lot. One of the part-time jobs is writing, but I also counsel online for an international company, and an international business school has just approached me about doing the same thing. And plus, I teach online now at Quincy University. So I have a lot of work, but I have a big family I enjoy. I have friends I enjoy. And the only advice is find your joy. Because if writing's not fun, I wouldn't do it. If it were just slogging along and saying, I have to do this right now, I wouldn't do it. Because at my age, I'm only working, well, I'm working for the money too, but I'm really working primarily because I enjoy every single job I'm doing. So it's a mindset. My job of writing is a fun job, and as I said, it funds my travels. But I think the biggest thing is to tell people, especially as you age, is that you don't have to stop pursuing your dreams. I've written all my life as a kid, and then part of my job at Crisis Prevention Institute was being the director of communications, where I wrote articles for these publications and stuff, but it wasn't creative writing, like fiction writing. And I didn't do it till I was 65. My first one got published. And you can do it too. I'm telling everybody who's sitting in their armchair saying, I ought to write a book. Well, then damn it, write it.
Love it.
Just do it.
I love it. I wrote my first book when I was 40-ish. And I was really worried that I'd waited too long. And then I quickly learned no, I might not have waited long enough. You know, there's something about accumulating life experience that is vital to a writer. And I say that tongue in cheek because my son is 22 and he's a prolific writer. And of course, you don't have to accumulate all the life experience before you write. I say that tongue in cheek, but you know, for me, you know, that was a realization. But Jerilyn, I've had so much fun talking to you. Where can people find you if they want to get plugged in with your books and to follow along with what's going on with you?
Well, I have a presence on Facebook, author Jerilyn Dufresne. So that would be one place. I have a website, JerilynDufresne.com, but it's mainly just a placeholder at the moment, and it's being developed. So within a few months, I will have a brand new website where they can reach me. So right now, or Amazon.com, I have an author page on Amazon. I would go to Amazon or Facebook, either one, and that's how they can reach me for now. And I'm very responsive when people make comments because I'm so excited about it.
And I'm going to put links to all that in the show notes. Jerilyn, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show.
Oh, Hank, thank you. This was a lot less painful than I thought it was going to be. It's like talking to a neighbor.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Tune in for new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Jason and Joey took their food trays outside and sat high above the parking lot on the secluded stairwell that had become their lunchtime hangout, picking at their Thanksgiving specials and swapping updates. They were almost finished eating before Jason managed to screw up the courage to say what he needed to. "I want to apologize." Joey looked puzzled. "What the hell for?" "Because your coma was my fault." "Yours? The horseman beamed me. You didn't." "Hey, want to see something cool? Look what I found on my phone." Joey produced the device, hit a few buttons, and swiped his finger. An orange circle hung in a field of black, overexposed, something that had been moving fast when the flash caught it. "I was trying to get his picture, right? Like an idiot? Well, I didn't get him, but that is the pumpkin he threw at me." Jason stared at the blurry orange shape for a long time. "Cool. Cool? Can you imagine if we actually got a picture of the Headless Horseman? We'd be famous by now." He pocketed the phone. "Hey, do you want the rest of this turkey? It looks like bologna." "Tastes like bologna, too." He speared the slice anyway. "Look, this is going to sound weird, but I think I made you a target." "What do you mean?" "I made you a target by telling you about my gift. It's some sort of magical rule. If we reveal ourselves to a normal person, whoever we tell becomes a target for ghosts. And usually, they die." "And you told me anyway?" "No, I'd already told you. There was no way to untell you. Don't be mad. It all worked out, right? Right?" Joey's expression had darkened. "Give me a second here. And there's a bright side." "What bright side?" "Now you'll have a gift, too." "Me?" "That's what your coma was. Some kind of transition. You got targeted, but you survived. You'll be a founder now, like Ichabod. You'll pass your gift to your kids like he passed his to me." Joey looked worried. "What kind of gift will I get?" "People get gifts that complement their natural abilities. It could be anything." "Anything? So, I could read minds?" "I guess." "Turn purple and levitate?" "Probably not. Something that expresses the essential you." "Then I'll have an actor's gift. What's an actor's gift?" Jason shrugged. "Super narcissism? Shut up. So you're not mad?" Joey was shaking with excitement. "Mad? This is the coolest thing ever! We'll be like the dynamic duo, fighting supernatural foes up and down the eastern seaboard." Jason laughed, feeling epic relief. "I thought you'd be pissed." "Nah. What's a little coma between friends?" He took a bite out of a Nutter Butter, grinning madly. I'm going to be a superhero. But you can't tell anyone. Why not? Weren't you listening? Everyone we tell dies. You can't talk about your gift to anybody. But if they were targeted and lived, we could have our own X-Men. Yeah, or all your friends could die. Do you want to risk that? No, I guess not. But I don't do closets very well, you know? I came out at conception. Promise to keep it to yourself. Yeah. Joey shifted sideways and walked his sneakers up the brick. So, the essential me. Ooh, I know what gift I'll get. I'll get a singer's gift. What's a singer's gift? Jason shrugged. Superhuman drug tolerance? Shut up!